You're standing in a museum in Athens, and in front of you under dim glass is something that shouldn't exist. It's a corroded bronze box the size of a book, pulled from the sea in 1901, and it contains at least 30 gears working in concert, gears so precisely cut that ancient Rome shouldn't have possessed the tools to make them. I'm Jacob, and what I'm about to show you rewrites everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. This is the Antikythera mechanism. On a warm afternoon in April of 1901, a Greek sponge diver named Elias Stadiatis was working near the island of Antikythera when he spotted something unusual beneath the waves. There was wreckage down there, scattered across the sea floor. A wooden ship had gone down, probably centuries before, and no one had ever documented what it carried. When divers brought up the cargo, they found statues, pottery, and bronze objects corroded into unrecognizable lumps. One lump in particular caught the eye of the archaeologists. It was dense, fractured, and clearly made of multiple components pressed together by time and salt water. They set it aside. For 2 years, it sat in a museum storage room, slowly drying. And then, in 1903, a conservator named Spiridon Marinatos noticed something. There was a gear visible in the crack, not a wheel, a gear. Specifically cut teeth, worn smooth by use, caught between layers of oxidized bronze. The question was obvious and impossible. Why would an ancient Greek put gears in a box? What was it trying to do? For more than 50 years, no one could answer that question. The object was studied, sketched, and dismissed as some kind of astrolabe or navigational tool. The gears seemed random. The markings on its surviving face were in ancient Greek, but they were fragmentary, worn away by saltwater corrosion. Ancient Greek, yes. But a machine? A computer? That wasn't part of the story we were supposed to believe about the ancient world. Then, in the 1950s, a historian named Derek DeSola Price decided to look at it differently. Price wasn't just an archaeologist. He was a historian of science, someone who understood both ancient texts and mechanical engineering. And he realized that everyone before him had been approaching this wrong. They were trying to see the whole mechanism. Price decided to look at what was missing. Derek DeSola Price published his findings in 1959, and they landed like a small bomb in academic circles. The mechanism, he argued, wasn't decorative. It wasn't a toy. It was a calculating device. An analog computer that took the position of the sun as input and displayed the positions of planets as output. It was designed to predict astronomical events. The problem was only about 30% of the machine had survived the shipwreck and the centuries of corrosion. But Price's analysis of the surviving gears and their teeth was meticulous. He identified what appeared to be a pin and slot mechanism that would allow one gear to drive another at a different rate. He saw evidence of differential gearing, a technique that wouldn't be seen again in European engineering for more than 1,000 years. And the inscriptions, when properly translated, mentioned the names of Greek months and the zodiac. Someone had built this machine to encode astronomical knowledge. It wasn't theoretical. It was practical, mechanical, and based on mathematics that the ancient Greek world had developed over centuries. The mechanism was created sometime around 100 BCE, most likely on the island of Rhodes, which was the center of mechanical engineering in the ancient world. But here's where the mystery deepened. We know of no other ancient texts that describe how to build such a machine. Cicero mentioned a similar device, a planetarium built by Archimedes in Syracuse, but that machine was lost in antiquity. There are no instruction manuals, no patents, no surviving descriptions of the engineering process. Someone figured out how to build this device, and then the knowledge simply vanished. The mechanism traveled aboard a merchant ship, possibly bound for Rome or Egypt. The ship wrecked, and for nearly 2,000 years, This was the only surviving example of its kind. There were no successors. No tradition of mechanical computing carried forward from the ancient Greeks to the medieval world. The mechanism fell into the sea, and the world forgot that the ancient Greeks had once solved one of the hardest problems in astronomy, predicting where the planets would be months or years in advance, without a telescope, without electricity, using only bronze and geometry. For decades after Price's discovery, the Antikythera mechanism remained a single, almost unintelligible artifact. Researchers could see some of its gears, but the corrosion was too severe to read the inscriptions clearly or to understand exactly how all the systems fit together. The surviving pieces showed evidence of at least 6 different gear trains, meaning at least 6 separate mathematical calculations happening simultaneously. But what were they calculating? The mechanism sat in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, studied by scholars but never fully understood. Then, in 2005, researchers at the University of Wales applied X-ray imaging to the mechanism for the first time. The corroded bronze was opaque to the naked eye, but X-ray tomography could penetrate through the layers of corrosion and show the internal structure. What they found was astonishing. Inside those ancient layers, they discovered at least 37 gears, not 30. Some of them were wheels within wheels, gears so small and so precisely cut that they would have required a high degree of mechanical skill to fabricate. The teeth count ranged from 8 to 223 teeth per gear, and their ratios matched astronomical ratios known to the ancient Greeks. A gear with 223 teeth combined with a gear with 19 teeth produces a ratio of about 11.7 to 1, which corresponds to the relationship between the lunar month and the solar year. Someone had encoded the mathematics of the cosmos into metal. In 2016, the mechanism underwent an even more intensive scanning process. Researchers created a complete 3D model of its internal structure, and they were able to read inscriptions that had been invisible for 2 centuries. The inscriptions revealed that the device was divided into 2 main sections. The front face displayed the positions of the sun and moon across the months of the year. The back face displayed something even more ambitious, a mechanical representation of the 235-month cycle of the Metonic cycle, which describes how lunar and solar years align every 19 years. This was used by ancient astronomers to predict eclipses. Inside the back of the mechanism, researchers also discovered dial markings that corresponded to Greek athletic competitions, the Olympiad, and the games at Nemea and Delphi. The machine didn't just calculate astronomical positions, it integrated calendars. It merged mathematics, astronomy, religion, and timekeeping into a single unified device. For a civilization without electricity, without factories, without standardized manufacturing, creating this required a level of mechanical sophistication that wouldn't be matched for many centuries. And yet, we don't know who built it. We don't know their name. We don't know if they trained an apprentice to continue their work. We don't know if there were others like them. What we know is that, sometime around 100 BCE, someone in the Greek world had the theoretical knowledge and the practical skill to solve an engineering problem that most of the modern world wouldn't be able to solve again until the Renaissance. And then the knowledge was lost. The Antikythera mechanism survived the Mediterranean in darkness, preserved by accident in a shipwreck, waiting for modern technology to finally read its secrets. But it raises a question that haunts archaeology. What else did the ancient world build that we've never found? What technologies were perfected and then abandoned, their methods lost forever? Because the mechanism wasn't alone. In Iraq, in a museum storage room, there are clay jars that may have held something equally impossible. They're called the Baghdad batteries. They're almost 2,000 years old, and if the science is right, ancient people may have figured out how to generate electrical current centuries before anyone in the modern world even theorized it was possible. That's what we're investigating next. I'll see you there.